Hey, welcome you all. Today we're going to be removing my brother's Street Glide rear tire to do wheel bearings, brakes, and whatnot. Remove obviously the saddlebags, get those out of the way. Then I'm going to remove the two bolts to the rear mount that hold the mufflers in place on both sides. And that'll allow me to be able to move the mufflers just enough to get the axle out of the way. So we take off the locking pin on the axle itself. Of course, you got to hold it so you don't lose it, because it will fly off as it did in my case here. Now I'm going to take a 36 millimeter socket. I'm going to loosen that nut and then just take it right off. And this is where taking that muffler bracket off, it allows you to move that muffler just enough to get these parts out. Now I'm going to come to the left side and break free that axle. Get it turning. This axle hasn't been off on this bike in many years, so I'm assuming it's not going to be easy to get up. Remove the adjuster on the right side. Now with a brass pin or brass punch, I'm knocking that axle out of its place, getting it to slide across. What's happening here is the grease is so old that the axle just doesn't want to budge out. So I have to actually, use the pin and get it out of there. Now pushing the muffler down. I thought we had clearance, but I forgot about the saddlebag mounts. Those are going to have to be removed. Actually, I don't have to remove it. I just got to take out two nuts. The one on the front here, right? We got to remove that nut and bolt. And we got to remove the nut and bolt on the back side of the bracket itself. And that's all you got to take off. And that'll give you enough play to move the saddlebag bracket out of its place. This is just on the left side. You don't have to do this on the right side. Now with those two bolts out, you can lift that bracket just enough to slide the axle out of its place. And that axle's still stuck in there. That grease is so old, it's just binding everything up. So what I got to do is I got to finish tapping it out with the brass punch and just go all the way out with it. And it fell right out. Look at that grease. Stuff was all binded up in there. I don't think this axle's ever been off this bike. Now there is one thing that I did forget to do, and that's to remove the brake caliper. So if you're going to attempt to take a rear wheel off a Street Glide, take the brake caliper off first before you knock out the axle. Just makes it easier. I mean, if you forget, you can still get it off. It's no big deal. So you're going to remove the two bolts that are mounting the caliper to the bracket, and then you'll be able to take it and set it aside. To make this job easier, you should take off the two side covers, which I'll be doing that here in a second. And now the brake caliper is out. And we should be able to get this wheel out of here. Careful when taking the wheel out. There are some spaces that are going to fall off. The ABS ring, a sensor on the right, and a spacer on the left. Remove the belt, and it should slide right out. Now I'm just taking the pulley off. Okay, here's the wheel. We are going to remove the bearings and install new bearings. Now to do that, because I don't have a bearing tool, I'm just going to weld 3 knobs onto the bearing itself and then punch it out with the brass punch. And it's that simple. Came right out. Take the sleeve, set it aside, and now we're going to turn the wheel over and punch out the other bearing. Just cleaning everything up before I put the new bearings in. Basically just wiping it down with some whatever you have, brake clean, carburetor clean, any kind of cleaning liquid will solve it. We'll do fine. Just tapping the bearing back in. Now on this, there is an ABS bearing. This is the ABS bearing. Make sure you put it in the right way. There is an outer facing and an inner, so it's got to be in right, or else the ABS sensor won't work correctly. So this bearing gets pushed in flush on this side. Clean up the area, same as the other side. Just wipe everything down. Clean up the sleeve. Got to make sure you put that sleeve in before you put the bearing, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. Clean it out. I'm trying to get all that old grease out of there so the axle don't bind up going in. Alright, put your sleeve in. Make sure it's in properly. And your bearing goes in. Now this is the non-ABS bearing that goes on the side where the pulley goes. Now you're just going to tap this in, or if you have a press, you're going to press it in until it hits the pin, the center pin. Now if you're doing it like me with a socket and a hammer, you'll hear the difference. Once it starts hitting the pin, it'll make a different tone. And then of course you can always stick your finger in there to see if it's bottomed out on the pin. Now the pulley itself has two bearings in it. Now what I'm doing is I'm tapping on the adapter. Now be careful because this adapter is aluminum. You don't want to damage it. There is a good chance you might damage it doing it this way, just to give you a heads up. So I'm going to tap it out and get those two bearings off. There's two bearings on the other side together. And there you go. And those are the bearings. They just sit side by side. And that's your adapter. So clean that up. Now I'm showing you here that some of that grease is caked on and there's corrosion in there on that aluminum adapter. So I'm taking a fine file and just cleaning that whole area up, getting rid of that corrosion that's inside that adapter. And that was probably one of the reasons why the axle wouldn't come out too, which is binding up on there. So once I clean it up with the file just enough to get that corrosion out of there, we're good. Cleaning up that spacer. Goes on the left side of the wheel. Getting the old grease off that axle. Then we're going to take it to the wire brush and clean up that rust and threads and everything else that's on there. She's good as new. just gonna clean up this brake caliper bracket real quick using some WD-40. And now it's time to install the bearings in the pulley. It should go in pretty easy. Just a matter of pressing them in or hammering in the way I'm doing it. Push them all the way down until they bottom out. And now the second bearing. Making sure it's seated all the way around there. And there you go. It's all set. It should still be some play in that aluminum adapter also. So the wheel went out to the shop to get a new tire put on, tube tire and all that. So while I'm waiting for that to come back, I'm just gonna go ahead and grease up the axle with some clean grease. Any good high temp grease will work on this. I'm just gonna run the axle through to make sure it slides through nicely, and to grease up the inside of the bearings and the adapter. Just take that rest of that grease and spread it on that shaft again. And use that bit that's there just to throw some more inside the adapter and the bearings. So everything's good and lubed. So now all we got to do is wait for the wheel to come back from the shop so we can put this all back together and install the brakes. You all take care. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.